world where achievements and accolades motivate us to do more and be more, we're often left wondering, is this really it?
Deep inside, you know there is more to life. You're ready to leave behind the old, push your way through, and claim the deeper life that's calling you.
That's where we excel.
We're your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslak.
And this is the Soulful Leader Podcast.
Sit back and relax as we share the shortcuts we've uncovered to help you make shift happen.
Hi, welcome to the Soulful Leader Podcast. This is Stephanie, and I'm here with Maren, and we're on a quest again. I love quests, and I haven't always loved quests or questions, I should say. Sometimes questions can feel interrogating. Sometimes questions can make me feel defensive or afraid. And years ago, I found this quote from Rainer Maria Rilke, Letters to a Young Poet. And it was one of those things that I heard the first time and thought, what? What was that? And I had to go back and re-listen to it numerous times. And I can honestly tell you, my mind, my brain, my cognitive self was basically saying, I have no idea what the heck that means. But my heart was literally going, oh, I want more. What is that? Keep coming, keep listening to that. So I'd like to read you that quote. And I thought, what a great way, Maren, like to unfold this as a conversation today.
I love that. And I think all of our listeners have felt at some point in our lives where we don't get it, like our conscious mind doesn't get it, and we know it's right. And there's something like our heart is all like, I'm all in. And what the heck did I just agree to?
Right. And our mind is going, I have no idea what I have no idea what I just said I'm agreeing to, but
right.
There's something that feels right, that I know is right.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the quote, and it goes like this. I would like to beg you, dear sir, as well as I can, to have patience with everything unresolved in your heart, and to try to love the questions themselves as if they were locked in rooms or books written in a very foreign language. Don't search for the answers, which could not be given to you now, because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps then, someday far in the future, you will gradually, without even noticing it, live your way into the answer. Wow.
I think the end, live the questions now. Perhaps someday, far in the future, you'll gradually, without even noticing it, live your way into the answer. That's the part that, and every time we read this, something else is going to stick out. That's the part that really stood out for me today. And I probably because that's the quest that I'm on right now. The quest that I'm on is not, how do I feel comfortable not having the answer and be okay with that? So like yesterday I was working with somebody and she said, so is this a new profession for you? And I was like, well, that's an interesting question, because I'm not really sure how to answer that question. And I kind of talked around it because I don't have an answer to that question, right? I have several things that I've been doing over the years that have been literally living my way into the answer of a question that I had years ago. and I'm being present to that. And I'm excited to see, well, this is evolving there and that's evolving here. And then somebody comes along and they have a very pointed question and I don't have a very pointed answer. Right? Because I'm living into it. It's my life.
Well, and the emphasis is so much on the answers, right? And even when we're
Mm,
asked a question, the emphasis within ourselves is, oh man, I got to come up with an answer. Like what you said when you were at this group that asked you, is this a new profession for you? And we're trained that way. It's like, oh, I don't have the answer. And so we go all the way around the block, basically, with other stories so that we can avoid saying, I don't know. I don't have an answer. Or I can't really articulate that answer right now because it's so deep
right.
inside me.
It's sitting in my heart, not in my
Mm.
conscious mind. It's like, it's yes and no and maybe. And
I don't know.
it's, I think the
Yeah.
other thing as you were talking that came up for me was that a lot of times we assume that the other person doesn't really want to know. How's your
Yeah.
day? Good.
Yeah. Carry on. Move on.
Right? They don't want to be bothered with the truth
Mm.
of like what's going on in your day. They just want a like, and this is how we're trained
Yeah.
of don't don't go too deeply into anybody's life. Don't ask real questions.
Stay
Keep
on
it
the
surface.
surface because we
Yeah.
don't want to stir up pain. It's interesting you're saying that. I recently had a really dear friend of mine that lost a loved one. And I didn't know what to say. Like, I don't know
Mm,
what to say. And as a therapist, I can have all my itty bitty shitty committee say, oh, what the hell have you been doing? You should have the answer. You should have this all figured out by now. What's wrong with you? You're an imposter. It goes on. And it's like, well, I'll Google an answer, I'll ask Siri, what's my answer? I'm constantly looking outside myself. And I remember a friend of mine saying one time, when they had lost a loved one, said, all I really wanted to hear from someone was that I love you and I know you're in a lot of pain right now and I don't know how to help you. What
right.
can I do? And sometimes the person says, that person that said to me that they said, I don't really even need you to do anything. I just need you to be
Mm,
present with me and to have patience. And I coming back to this quote from Rilke saying, I would like to beg you, dear sir, as well as I can, to have patience
mm,
with everything unresolved in your heart and try to love the question. Wow. Like love the question. Like how many of us like say, I really love questions? No, I hate this. Why are you asking me so many questions? Like really, can we just stop asking the questions right now? Like I feel interrogated.
And I think about this, like when I hear that unresolved, all the
Mm,
unresolved things in your life, I'm looking around my office, which is in transition because my life is in transition.
mhm,
And there is a part of me every time I walk into my office that says, a better person would have figured this out
mm,
already. It would have been redesigned for the new Maren and I'd be on my way.
mm,
And I think about that and I pull apart that sentence and I go, a better person. Okay, first of all, I'm judging myself. So now I've closed all the doors for all the options because I'm in shame and judgment.
mm.
And then I say, would have figured it out. And this is one of the things that I am committed to stop figuring things out in my life.
Yeah.
So when I can stop and like when I do this right now, when I walk in my office and I hear that itty bitty shitty committee saying that same or a version of that same thing, I kind of chuckle. I'm like, I hear you. I hear you. And it's just not true for me right now. So it's going to stay in a little bit of chaos and it will be unresolved. And I will
Mhm.
have patience with it. I won't try and figure it out. I will live my way into the answer.
Yeah. And to love the question, like actually embrace it as a really good friend that's taking you on an adventure.
I love that because I had not even gotten to that place yet. I had gotten to the like, okay, we're gonna hush the chitter chatter and be like, I'll get there, I'll get there, I'll get there. And I hadn't really actually embraced that question of
Mm,
like, who is the Maren who's gonna be in this space and what the heck does she want it to look
mhm,
like?
mhm.
And when I think about it like that, like you just made me so happy because when
Well,
I think about it like that, now I'm more engaged. Now I'm like kind of excited to explore it.
it's falling in love, right?
Yeah.
And I like even that word falling in, not out of love, because out is outside. So I've been reflecting that question, like, what does it mean to fall in love or rise in love? What does that
Mm.
mean? And it's like to be in love isn't about outside. It's not about the thing I'm attracted to or attached to. It's actually inside me. And guess who has control? And the key to unlock that door is me. I choose what I'm in love with.
Mm.
And if something tells me, oh, why are you in love with that? Like, ew. And it's like, well, that's their story, isn't it?
Right.
And when I fall out of love, I'm actually listening to someone else's story outside of me instead of going, huh, in love is actually inside me. And I can cultivate this. I can nourish this. I can ask better questions and fall in love with that. And that's the great unknown, the great mystery is actually alluring. It's actually intriguing. It makes me curious and wonder. Yeah, like what if I actually was in love with that quest?
Mm. And
Then a
yeah,
different part of me shows up.
because I mean, obviously, y'all are listening. You know, none of us has been really taught to do this. We've been taught to seek answers, not to seek questions. And what a different paradigm we would all
Oh,
live in
totally.
if
Well,
we were seeking questions. And
right. And
that's what, technically, that is what the mystery schools taught, was to seek questions. And our industrial schooling really wanted to, industrial schooling, today's uh, version of school was created in the industrial age, and it was created to teach people to be controlled.
yep.
Because it was easier for them to fill their factories if everybody was in a place of like showing up on time and doing all the things that they were
And
told to
compliant
do.
and compliant,
Exactly.
not asking too many questions.
It creates chaos when you
Right.
ask too many questions, and that was not, it didn't work in the industrial age. Well, guess what? It doesn't work anymore because we're not in the industrial age anymore.
Yeah.
And we're moving
Yeah.
out of the age of information. We've got so much information that finding an answer is actually easy. You just go to Chat GPT and ask it, right? And so it's not even about the answers anymore. It is literally about the quest because we're
Well,
moving to the age of
I
imagination.
was
And
just
that
going to
is,
say that. In order to have an imagination, we need to ask questions
mm,
because it's what opens up the doors. And that, that's the next line, right? In Rilke's poems, don't search for the answers because that's the information. Information now ages over. And by the way, this is like, Lotus the Young Poet is like in the 1800s. I'm telling you, this is, long time ago. And so he says, don't search for the answers, which could not be given to you now because you would not be able to live them.
mm,
See, so if we had all the answers and then we get the answers, we tell ourselves, I'm not that. I can't live that. I'm not good enough. I don't have those skills. How am I ever going to live this? I don't have that money. I don't have that time. And so then we
right.
go into that poor sad tomato story, and we give up and we stop living. We start existing and we become that complacent worker in a world that is not allowed to be diverse, and we have to fit in.
I think about they've done all these studies on people who win the lottery, and that they win the lottery and then they go further into debt than they originally were. Most people not only lose the money, they lose more than that. And that's getting the answer before
Mm.
before you're ready,
Before
before
you've
you've
worked, before you've worked at it, you haven't had the internal awareness of how to even manage your own life force, your time, your money, your energy. And then all of a sudden you're gifted with a lot of, this happens with love too. It's like,
yeah.
if you haven't worked on discovering how to love, to be in love with yourself, how will you ever recognize when something shows up outside of you? You'll miss it. You'll miss the signs. You'll miss the wonders. And it's not about shaming. It's not about going, oops, I screwed up.
No,
It's just knowing that you may not be prepared inside yet. And to receive something before you're prepared inside, in your heart, in your mind, in your soul, you'll,
you won't be ready for it, so
yeah, and
it will go away, or
and it'll hurt more.
yeah, because then it adds to the shame and everything else.
Mm.
So living the question instead of seeking the answer, because if I live the question of how do I become a millionaire instead of seeking the answer of how do I get $1 million, so the fine line where there is, being a millionaire is a state of being. It's not the money that you have. I remember hearing, and I'm not sure who it is. I can't even give them credit, but it's somebody famous who said, you know, your worth is not how much money you have. It's what you have left after you've lost all your money.
Mm.
Your value, right? So that is like somebody who owns being a millionaire or a billionaire, or like if they lost all their money tomorrow, they would make it back the next day, right? It's that, because that's who they are. And so if I'm living the question of how do I become that, now I'm working on that part of me.
And it
in,
becomes skill
and
building. It
it's the
becomes
internal,
curious. Yeah.
right? That's where we go to the internal. Whereas if I am asking the question, how do I get $1 million? Now I'm scheming to try and get it from out
Mhm.
there. And it's an external thing.
Yeah. So the word you're saying is become, is
Mhm.
being. How do I be with it? How do I be in love? How do I be in service? How do I be a leader?
How do I be in the question
Right.
instead of seeking the answer, so that I become the quest and allow, as Rilke says, allow without even noticing it, live your way into the answer.
Yes, because the quest, I remember someone, a great teacher of mine, said, you cannot ask a question without already having the answer within you.
Mm.
It just hasn't percolated up yet. It's like a seed that's been planted within you. So if you are asking the question, it's because the seed is planted within you, and it is going to sprout. It will
Yeah.
happen. And so to not worry about the answers, but to literally find ways to develop better questions so that you can live differently in your life.
So one of the things that I'm doing right now is kind of, I gave you an example earlier about being, walking into my office. I'm noticing so the first thing is notice your response, your reaction when you don't know something. So you'll go into some sort of reaction or response. And earlier, Stephanie and I were talking about, like, if I don't know something and I feel like I should know it, I get
Mm,
defensive.
right.
Right. If I don't know something and I really don't know it, now I feel shame.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know. Should I? Right. So I start to look for where I'm feeling that in my life. And then I look at, is there a place, like, is it because I'm not comfortable not knowing
Mm. That you get anxious and
that I get
react.
anxious and I'm in that reaction? But the red flag for me, or the thing that makes me stop and gives me an opportunity to be in choice about am I going to go to the reaction or not, is the reaction itself. It's like, oh, I noticed myself get triggered there, right? I noticed myself suddenly be really self-conscious. And I'm like, why am I so self-conscious right away? Oh, because I think I should know that. What if I didn't know it?
Mm,
What if some part of me did know it?
mm. And
Who
this is,
do
yeah,
who
who do
do
I
I
need to
become?
come?
Who do I become when I feel like I don't know it? I shut down and I kind of, withdraw into myself and like, okay, what
So,
if,
so you look at your behaviors, you look at your choices when you are believing from the shame place, from the I should figure it out, I should know this.
yeah.
Or what are they going to think of me if I don't give them an answer?
And the minute I shut down, I shut myself off from all the potential solutions.
Yeah.
And it's so backwards, right?
And you close off the possibilities of connection and love
Right.
with other people, with other possibilities. Like you're saying, it's like, there's an Apple on Apple TV, Ted Lasso.
Oh,
Great show. And why I love it is because you have this incredibly vulnerable man who is meant to be the leader of an English football team, which in our Western language is soccer in North America. But he's a football in North America coach, and he's been hired to be a football soccer coach in England, and he knows diddly squat about English football. And he doesn't hesitate to tell people that, like, I don't know. And so it's been such a practice of leadership, of watching him and his evolution, his vulnerability, his humbleness, his willingness to reach out and connect and to ask for support and help. It's really quite a lovely show.
the other thing is he makes people more important than being right. So he doesn't need to
Exactly.
know the answer. He's all about connecting people and making people. It's
Mhm.
like, yeah, what a leader, like, ugh, that would make our world so different.
So he's been a really great example for me as a leader of saying, well, what if I could be Ted Lasso in this moment? How would Ted Lasso approach this problem or situation from a place of humility and to live into the questions, live or ask the questions and live into the answers, and not
Right.
having to be the one that has to figure it all out. And when I mean figuring it out, getting into my head thinking that I'm the one that has to solve this, it's like, no, when I think that way, like we just said, I actually disconnect myself from possible streams of flow and potential. But I'm going to have to let go of my identity, my ego. I remember being a tour guide, and let me tell you, there are times, I mean, God love these people that go on motor coach tours and have a tour guide, because you pay big money to have this tour guide tell you everything about everything. And it's not always right. And I remember when I first started, I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do if I don't know everything? What if they ask me a question that I don't know?
Mm.
And one of the things in leadership as a tour guide, they say, don't ever tell them a lie. Like, don't, like, unless you absolutely know it's true, be humble and say, what a great question.
Mm.
Let me get back to you on that one, because I don't have the answer, but it's a great question. So we're going to have a little break here and pull over and take a picture, and let me Google that. Let me look that up. I'll ask somebody. And at first, when I started to do that, I felt such shame. I'm like, oh my God, I'm never going to get any tips. They're not going to like me, but really, they're not going to like me if I tell them a false
Right.
truth. I tell them something that I'm just making up. And what if I could embody a sense of humor and a sense of humility? I'm going to have a completely different relationship with those participants.
Yeah.
And I think that that is true with our leadership role in life.
I was
Whether
going to say
you're,
that
yeah,
our teams, whether it's your team that's your family or your team that's your corporate team, or if you're an entrepreneur and you have, a bunch of people you're trading with, they're still your team.
mhm.
And being that vulnerable person, it's interesting because earlier we were talking about how it's a skill. And I think that one of the things that I want to keep reminding myself and remind all of our listeners is The reason that we build skills is because there's value to them. So for me to keep going with the practice of peeling back the layers and finding that, aha, I see you, you're feeling uncomfortable there. It's because that's the unknown and you want to get comfortable with the unknown, is reminding myself of the value of being comfortable in not knowing.
Yeah. Boy,
Because
that's a skill. That's
our
a skill.
society has really beat us over the head over and over and over with the value of having the answers, of
Yeah.
being right. And so it's such an unlearning process, and we need the reminders on a regular basis. I do anyway.
Yeah. And, you know, not knowing is a call for intimacy. And I don't mean sex here, people. I'm talking into me, I see. It's an opportunity to go deeper and discover more of who you are and why you're here and your reason for being, and all those beautiful treasures that you are holding within you. And I'm actually just got an insight of something that happened to me in my recent past, of when someone didn't know something. And it was like 2, 3, 4 months. And I was like, I was getting impatient because, and here's why. 2 things that I'm seeing now that I'm owning up to is, like, one, I was impatient because what was going on inside of me was I was afraid. I was like, oh my gosh, maybe they really know and they're living a lie. So I was making up all these stories in my head. And so what that made me do is push them away, which made them even more scared, which then made them push me away. So now there's more and more and more and more space between us instead of connecting. It was an opportunity for intimacy. It was an opportunity to go deeper in love with each other in that moment. But because myself, I needed to practice more unlearning and more unlearning and just staying to the moment of the self. And like, okay, what am I believing right now about this person who I love that is in the unknown? I need to go work with that. And there was an opportunity for me to be humble and for me to be vulnerable, like Ted Lasso, and to say, this is what's going on for me. Not out of judgment, not out of fear or shame, but to really reveal a part of me that I didn't even know was there. And things could be very different. And I'm glad I'm recognizing this now, because now I'm seeing this, that the next time I'm with somebody, and this just happened recently, I was with someone who didn't know something. And I could hear that thought in my mind going, you know, I want to push them to know. I want to tell them, well, you do know. It just, you know, what if you did know? And what if you created some space to just listen? And I stopped myself because I'm like, wait a minute. What if when that person said, I don't know? I said, well, what do you believe about not knowing? How can I be with you in that? Just like I said about my friend who had lost their loved one. And I said, I don't know what to do or what to say. And that person said, thank you. I don't either. But the fact that you're here with me in this right now is everything.
Yeah.
And that touches my heart.
It does. It touches mine. And I left that pause and I didn't want to fill it because I think that we all can experience that, of it filling and touching our hearts. And that's where we get the intimacy and we get the connection between all of us and into ourselves.
And to sit with the not knowing, that's like sitting in the darkness.
So
and being loved. Yeah.
You recently gave your yin yoga a question, a quest that they could think about that I loved. Would you be willing to share that as we wind up our podcast?
You know, because this is the unknown, has really been, you know, it's really been calling me and nourishing me on some level. And I'm learning to love the unknown. I'm learning to love the question. That this question popped up and it said, what is the question that your life is the answer to? What is the question that your life is the answer to?
that just puts such a different perspective, even just sitting with that. Like, you won't have an answer. Don't worry about getting an answer, people. Sit with it. And really, the end of Rilke's poem, without even noticing it, live your way into the answer.
Marinate.
Yeah.
Let it marinate you, tenderize you.
Unless you start asking the question, you won't ever live into the answer. So today, start with like, oh, my life might be the answer to a question. Yes, most definitely it is.
Mm-hmm. So what is the question that your life is the answer to?
Thank you all for joining us today for this exploration of the Rilke poem. I will make sure to put the poem in the quote into our show notes so you can find them there. And remember that you can find us on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and now on YouTube, so you can watch our little talking heads. So join us there. All of those are at Soulful Leaders. And you can always find us on our website, thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com. We'll see you all next week.
And that wraps up another episode of the Soulful Leader Podcast with your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslack. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to dive deeper, head over to our website at thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com.
Until next time.